Thank you. I'm joined by Gagan Gupta, the co-founder of Arise, and we're here to discuss various issues connected to the supply chains and these new industrial zones that are being produced. To start, Gagan, what opportunities and benefits should stakeholders, from prospective investors to farmers, expect from the evolution of regional textile value chains?
First of all, thank you for having me with you. I think you have raised a very fundamental question. Really, what does textile value chain really brings to various stakeholders? I think we should start first defining what the stakeholders are. I'll probably put the stakeholders into three buckets. One is garment. So what it really means for the garment. Secondly, what it means for the farmer or the person who really produces this cotton. Thirdly, what it means really for the communities. It's important to define what these stakeholders get. So let's start with the garment first. I think today, if you look at these countries, they export raw cotton at about $2 a ton, $2 a kg, sorry. And when we were to convert into a finished product, that worth about $20. So you're adding 10 times value. So if you look at, say, a country like Benin, their exports are roughly between 600 million to $1 billion. But the moment you're able to convert into a finished product, that moves from $6 billion to $10 billion. So you're now moving a product from 600 to 6 billion. But what does this do to the garment? Now we have changed the GDP of the garment. That means that debt to GDP ratio has changed. That means the ability to borrow and deploy in social projects has completely changed. That for their balance of payments have changed. It completely alters the economic balance of the country. Secondly, what it does is when you're exporting raw product, your ability to tax, even if you're taking, say, on a $600 million, you're taking a 1% tax, that's only 6 million. But on a bigger base, that 1% is much bigger. So it increases the tax-based revenue for the government. Thirdly, you are creating jobs and therefore all the indirect taxation that comes with it. So that's for the first stakeholder. Now, if you come for the large communities, textile is very, very manpower intensive. So with what we're developing, we expect close to about 100,000 people working in the textile sector in first 3 years. So we've created massive amount of jobs for people, and that's what really communities get. You get stable jobs. But we have to realize the secondary benefit of it. So when we're building these industrial zones, the jobs are getting created. Now there's another company of government which is coming and building social housing. Because they know that these people will have stable jobs for next 25, 30 years. They can afford a mortgage and they can build a house. So then you start a secondary development for the communities. The third thing which is very important, what the farmers get. So today farmers get a very small portion of the overall value chain. But since you're bringing industry next to them, you're basically eliminating a lot of middlemen, and therefore they're able to get better value for their product. And what we're designing is that the farmer associations and the ginners also become part of this industry in small stakes. So they also start owning some stakes in this industry, which means they're able to participate in the entire value chain. So I think overall, I would say it's a complete game changer, both for the government, for the communities, and for the overall country.
What made you choose Benin? I mean, what made you choose Gabon? What unifies these particular markets?
So I think, our focus as Arise IIP is to look at two things. Whenever we go to a country, we look at saying what this country produces raw, which it is exporting today, which can be transformed in this country competitively. So if you look at Gabon for last 100 years was exporting round logs. And when we came in, we built an industrial zone focused on wood. And today, we are exporting, Gabon has become the largest exporter of veneer globally.
Of which?
Veneer. Veneer is a form of wood transformation.
Oh, right. Okay.
And we expect Gabon to become the largest exporter of plywood in Africa by end of this year. It was unimaginable that Gabon will be doing this. And happy to say that by June of this year, we'll be opening first store of furniture made in Gabon in Miami. It was unimaginable that a country like Gabon will be having a store of furniture made in Gabon. But what is important is to look at the value chain. When you exported this round log, you were exporting it for 150 euros a cubic meter. Same transformed into furniture sells for 4,000. So you're now adding 27 times increase in the value. More interestingly, it changes the tax base. So the government's tax base has increased. Now when you come to Benin, we said in Benin, what is Benin strong in? Benin is strong in producing raw cashew in cotton. And therefore the industrial zone of Benin is focused on one side on cashew nuts and on textile. Because Benin is the largest producer of cotton in Africa.
Okay.
But if you look at cashew nut, for example, you know, Benin exports raw cashew. We started the construction of industrial zone last May. It'll be operational this July. And by next March, Benin will stop exporting raw cashew. It shows how in less than 24 months they have gone from zero value addition to 100% value addition. In case of textile, Benin will have 3 textile mills operational by end of 2023. And those textile mills will employ roughly about 20,000 people. In a span of less than 2 years, that's a massive transformation. Why we chose? Because they have cotton and they can transform that competitively. Similarly, in Togo, we are putting an industrial zone, again focused on cotton because it has cotton. So what we do is we look at each country saying what this country has raw material which we can transform competitively. The second basis that we build the industrial zone is what is that country is importing. So we looked at these countries and saying, all of them import a lot of motorbikes which are used as taxi. And these motorbikes then result in, pollution, they result in, balance of payment because they're importing fuel and also subsidy of fuel. So now we are attracting companies. In both the Benin and Togo, there's a company which is focused on manufacturing electric motorbikes, and they'll be operational by August of this year. So really we look at both import bucket and export bucket, and that's how we build our value chain in each of the countries.
But somewhere like Togo and Benin, how difficult is it to get the government support, the consistent government support you need to create these? Because you're making such an impact on the economy, but at the same time, it must have been quite hard work to persuade the governments to see the way that you saw things.
So I think in my experience, I have visited most of the countries in Africa. My experience is it's very leadership driven. So you have countries where the leaders are forward thinking and they clearly understand the value chain. They clearly understand that the only way for them to create jobs and to change their economies to industrialize. And they're forward looking leaders who clearly are engaged in this and they support it. A lot of times there can be disconnect between what the leader wants and the team. And that is where you have to work a lot to explain what this really means. It's a journey. And I think it typically takes between 12 to 24 months to get everybody aligned. But the best part is when people see this happening, they see this coming from the ground, all become associated. And everybody wants to support. So I think it's first 12 to 24 months of a lot of working. But my experience in most of the countries, the heads of state and the key people understand this. It's really, sometimes the broader team that needs to see it. Because it has not happened in the past, therefore people don't believe it. But good thing with Arise, since we have now done it in Gabon, in Togo, and now doing in Benin, people know that is possible. So we have set an example, people can go and see and believe it.
How many places could we do this in?
People will say we can do all the countries, but I would say you cannot do in all the countries. We are in Gabon, Togo, Benin, and Côte d'Ivoire.
Oh, in Côte d'Ivoire, of course. Wow. Okay. And so how far can this go?
My assessment, a lot of countries can do this. And if you look fundamentally, Africa is in the right position today. So, I look at, both global trends and continental trends. So if you look at global trends, all the countries globally, especially Europe and US, are focused on diversifying the supply chain away from Asia, closer to home. And that's aiding Africa. The second part I see is the entire focus on climate. So today, you look at the industries, you send raw material all the way from Africa to Asia and bring it back. But if you're able to bring nearshoring, you eliminate a lot of pollution that gets caused. The third trend that I clearly see that is happening is demographics. So if you look at China, China's per capita GDP is now about 10,000. And therefore people will want to do very different kind of jobs what they've done in the past, which means that some of these jobs will have to move away from these countries to other countries. Now, if you just look at Africa from an Africa perspective, so next 10 years, China is going to lose 36 million people in the job market just because of demographics. Because Africa is going to add over 100 million. So is really very advantageous to Africa. Secondly, Africa sits on raw material. Thirdly, Africa is becoming bigger the market. They're going to double their consumption and the youth coming to the market. And fourthly, that when you set up something new, you don't need to repeat the mistakes of the past. So all the industrialization can be very sustainable. You can power with green energy, you can ensure all the construction is LEED friendly, so you can very differently. But will all the countries in Africa benefit out of it? No. There'll be some countries who will truly get benefit out of it. And they'll be driven by the leadership and the policies they put in place. My assessment, it's a journey. I would say in next 10 years, in next 3 to 4 years, you will see probably 10 to 12 countries really emerging. And then, as other countries see, oh, they have been successful, more and more will join the bandwagon. But not all will be successful.
And when is Benin opening?
Benin is opening on 31st of July. And when we open it, I expect between 7 to 10,000 people already working. So we'll have 2 cashew nuts units already operating. We'll have 3 textile plants under construction. And you should be there to see what we're doing.
I've never been to Benin, and I like to visit new countries. So how can we operate? How can we operate a shift from smallholder cotton farmers to a modern and large-scale industrial cotton supply chain? You've answered a bit of that already, I think.
So I think you've asked a very valid question, and that applies to cotton and other products. So in Africa, because of the nature of the land rights, the land over a period of time has got divided, and the land each the farmer owns is very small when compared to a US or Australia, where people have large farm holdings. I think it'll take some time for any consolidation to happen, and that'll happen more towards cooperatives, where people as cooperatives come together and farm together. But that journey will be a 5 to 10 year journey. But what you will see is a lot of use of tech to help this. So for example, in some of our places, what we're doing is, rather than all the farmers buying a tractor, we put a tractor and farmers can use it by hours. So you can bring mechanization without large consolidation. You can bring digital without large consolidation by fractional usage of assets. And we see this happening a lot. And my belief is in next 2 to 3 years, you will see fractional ownership or fractional usage actually bringing mechanization. In the past, that was not possible, because imagine you wanted to buy a tractor, but if you only had a half a hectare or a hectare of plot, it'll not make sense. But today, the digital world has changed that completely. So I would say next 2 to 3 years, you will see some massive usage of technology helping mechanization, even with smallholders.
What impact? Well, actually, let's go here first. What do you consider as the biggest operational challenge for investing, developing regional value chains, and exporting final products? And what is being done to mitigate these?
I think I would probably put challenges in 3 buckets. First is, how do you develop trained manpower? So how do you get people to know this? And there's a lot of mismatch between what is being taught in the school, what is being taught in the university, and versus what are the job needs. So that's one bucket. And what we are doing there is we are ensuring that each of our industrial zones have vocational training centers. So we have a vocational training center in Gabon in partnership with the government. In Benin, Togo, we are developing vocational training centers. So we'll be training close to 10,000 people in Benin between now and next year. So that even as our textile mills come up, we already have a trained manpower.
Are you outsourcing that? You have some firm you work with to...
So yes, what we do is we build the infrastructure, and then we outsource in terms of the trainers and everybody who can train the people. That's the first bucket, really getting people to be trained. The second bucket, I think we don't realize, is logistics. So the cost of logistics is very expensive, when you want to send goods from one place to another. So in all the industrial zones, we are putting a lot of warehousing, a lot of inland container depot to bring down the logistics cost. The third is really availability of capital. So when you look at, say if you're in Asia, you're in Europe, you can borrow money at 2-3% or 4%. But in Africa, you can borrow only at 8 and 10%. So there's a capital cost, mismatch. So what we do is, a lot of times we come and support the industry in the industrial zone in terms of some kind of capital that we help them in the early days so that they can kickstart early. But I think if you have to really develop, we have to solve for the vocational training, we have to solve for the capital availability. That's very important.
So you go work together with the World Bank or other for this credit lending?
So we work with a lot with development financial institutions like Afrexim Bank, with Africa Finance Corporation. Our experience has been that the African DFIs, they understand better because they are in the continent. So, we have seen the African DFIs and the regional DFIs are more amenable to this kind of project. So be it BUAD, be it EBIT, be it DRC, all these are regional development financial institutions, and we work very well with them.
Now, what impact will this what strategies are being deployed to ensure long-term sustainability in value chains?
So you asked a very valid point, and I would say this is the biggest advantage and the differentiator of the industrial zones we're developing. And I will put this into, again, few big pillars. So if you first look purely from environment perspective, so all our industrial zones, we are focusing that we power them through renewable, so that all the energy is clean energy. And happy to say our industrial zone in Gabon was the first carbon neutral industrial zone in Africa. So clearly ensuring that the industrial zone is powered with clean energy. Secondly, ensuring the entire supply chain is traceable. So you can trace the product right from the farmer to the finished product. And depending on the product, we use different softwares to track. Example, in case of cotton, we have tied up with a company called Fiber Trace. What we do is, the cotton, even before ginning, we add a non-coloring pigment to the cotton. And then you can trace back to your t-shirt the entire origin by scanning it. And it stays for 10 years.
Wow.
So full traceability. The second part we're doing is ensuring we do a life cycle carbon assessment of the entire product. So we should be able to tell you a t-shirt made in Benin is X carbon impact versus if it was made in Bangladesh versus if it was made in China. So we're doing a full life cycle carbon assessment for everything manufactured there.
And it's always significantly less.
Significantly less, because you are closer to raw material, you're closer to the market. So you're removing all that. Third thing is we are ensuring that we follow all the global certifications. So each product, for example, in case of timber, it's FSC. In case of cotton, it's very different. So we ensure we follow all these. But above all, we're also ensuring that this becomes a differentiator. So it's not just about lip service, but using ESG as a differentiator in what we are doing. And that is what is also interesting for the big brands, that they can now get a fully traceable certified product along with low carbon impact.
Wow. Do you help them find the market in the end as well? I mean, for finished products? Or are the companies that you're employing, are they already aware of those?
So very good point. So we help them find end markets to our industrial units. In the industrial zone, we help them find end markets. So there are two types of companies which already know the end markets. They come and just manufacture and sell. And the other companies whom we help find markets. So it's both, depending on what the company needs.
And what impact will this consolidation have in terms of ESG goals? Well, you've just mentioned that. Is there anything else you'd like to add about ESG?
I would say it'll be a game changer for global footprint. It'll be a game changer from perspective that, because ESG is not just about environment, it's also about social. By bringing manufacturing closer to the owner of the resource, you're actually helping increase his income. So for example, if now you are buying cotton from the farmer next door, you're able to pay him better, which means you are helping reduce income inequality. That's a massive change. So what we have seen, for example, in timber in Gabon, before we came in, for example, okume, which is one of the species, used to sell for roughly about 90 euros. After we came in, the price has gone to 150 euros. Because since the industrial is close to the source, they can select the product, they can pay better, and you have eliminated all the people in between. So there's going to be also massive availability or massive redistribution of the resource value to the farmer.
Fabulous. So finally, before we finish, is there anything else you'd like to add at all on this whole development before we finish?
I would say Africa is happening. It's not going to happen in future, it's happening now. And it's the time for everybody to focus and saying, how can we manufacture and create jobs in Africa? It'll be important that we help create jobs in Africa, but it also ensures that you fix the population in a place. Also, you create massive SDG impact. So I welcome all the people to look at investing in Africa and the industrialization of Africa.
Gagan, thank you very much.